Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you taking your time out of the day to join us for this What's New in GP 2018 workshop. We are Interdyne Artists. We are a Microsoft Dynamics partner based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been in business for 28 years. We're a Microsoft Gold certified partner. On the call today, you'll have myself, Chelsea Schlepp, and Erin Daniels. We are client strategy managers and work with existing Microsoft Dynamic accounts. We also have Shawn Dorward, who is going to be presenting. He is one of our senior implementation consultants, also a GPUG All-Star and a Microsoft MVP.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to talk about the cool new features that are going to be released on December 1st, 2017 for the new product release, Microsoft Dynamics GP 2018. I've kind of broken these up into some categories here, and that's our agenda, but we'll go ahead and just get right into it and start with some sorting options that are new functionality in GP 2018. So for receivable sort options, we now have two new available sorts, document amount and amount remaining. And this is available in the transactions by customer and transaction by document. I'm in the receivables transaction inquiry window here. Normally what we just have is we basically need to know the document number or the document date. Otherwise, we're just kind of scrolling here through trying to find, if we don't know that document number, it makes it very difficult. But now I can just switch down here and go to document amount and have that sort ascending or descending. So if I just know the document amount, and let's just say I do know mine is, I don't know, 1219.49, that certainly made it a whole lot easier for me to find and go on and do my work relating to that transaction. So that's two new sort options. That's available on the transactions by customer and transactions by document. Pretty cool. Another sort option, same concept in the payables area. This is in the transactions by vendor and transactions by document. So we have two new here as well. It's document amount and the amount remaining. So if we wanted to look and see if we had, actually it's unapplied amount, excuse me. If we wanted to look and see if we had unapplied amounts in our transaction listing here, we could sort that and away we go, or maybe even original amount. So there's our original amount as well. So pretty cool, nice little sort feature. The last one I want to highlight here is in the bank rec window. So if you ever go through your bank reconciliation and you're trying to find that loan transaction that's for $2,500 or something to that effect, right now you're using a version of GP that has the ability to sort by type, which would basically give you grouping of all your deposits in this type column here. But then when you get into those particular areas, it's not really doing anything as far as helping you find things by document amount. So you see here, my check is 13,000, 4,000, 1,000, 2,000. Really makes it hard to find if you're looking just by amount. But if I go ahead and switch to payment, I'll leave this ascending and redisplay. Now you see that I have all of my payments here, and they're in ascending order for my in my bank rec window for me to find those transactions significantly easier. That's pretty cool. That's one of my favorite sort features in GP 2018. Close up my windows here. Let's see what else we got. So let's move on to the next grouping, and these are related to the HR Payroll module. I'm a big fan of the HR Payroll module. I hope you are too. If you use garnishments in GP, you now have the ability to turn off the garnishment report. Up until GP 2018, the garnishment report was not available in the administration company posting option, where you could turn that off just by unchecking that report, or change its default by switching it to go from prompting each time to have it maybe default coming to your monitor, or even just going to a file automatically. Nice little enhancement there. For those of you who do use Payroll, you know that there's some pain in having inactive records not get updated through the roll down of the master records. Brand new with GP 2018, any changes made to your master records in the Payroll module now will roll down to inactive records as well, so that perhaps when someone re-enrolls in the 401k, their their card for their employee record has the appropriate settings set. Also, pretty cool new feature In the payroll code modifier, we always had the ability to change pay codes, benefit codes, and deductions. In GP 2018 now we can also modify the department code. So you're no longer going to be stuck with those old department codes and just have some sort of renaming mapping. Pretty cool. And that's under HR, payroll, utilities, payroll, and pay code modifier. We now have the ability to filter out inactive records when we look up deductions and benefit codes. This is sort of a two-step process if you want to do it on an ongoing basis. I'm just going to come into the payroll module, pull up an employee, and if I wanted to look up for the employee, and now you could do this on the employee window as well, so I'll just show you from here. Right now it's going to show by all employees, but I can mark and exclude inactive employees. And then the second step there is set as my default view. That's the same process when you go into your deduction lookup and your benefit lookup. So now no longer will your sort windows or your lookup windows include inactive records. That brings us to the end of our payroll section. Next, we're going to talk about the new enhancements to doc attachment. So document attachment has been sort of gone through an overhaul as far as how we went from attaching things in the note field to attaching them into a different window called Doc Attach, where those documents are actually stored on your SQL server rather than on your file share. Up until now, you may have noticed that it's been a bit of a challenge attaching documents to transactions that have already posted or were in history. Now in the administration setup company Doc Attach window, there's a new function to allow documents to be attached to inquiry windows. So this scenario here is I already have something, maybe for my vendor, and I'll just go in the transactions by vendor. Maybe I already have something here, and I posted a payment, and I realized that I forgot to attach the copy of the invoice, and now I can just click on attach and attach it in my posted transaction. Another nice functionality here that Microsoft is bringing to us is the ability to password that option. So maybe you want to have the ability to have that window transactions get new documents attached in the payroll module, but maybe not in another module. So you can apply a password there. Also, for document attach, it's now available on receivable transactions. So if you want to attach a copy of the check that you're going to be depositing, you certainly can do that. Or if you want to attach a copy of the invoice that you're receiving against. This is under receivables transaction entry, some in sales transactions, transaction entry. And you see right here is the attach button. And then we can go ahead and attach our documents there as well. That will flow through and be part of our history when we drill around in GP. That's also available from the transaction inquiry, which is kind of nice. Very cool one. One of my favorites here in this category for sure is being able to attach directly into the general ledger transaction entry window. So notice here now in our general ledger window we have the attach paperclip where we can attach the backup from our journal entries. And this can even be done after it's posted as well. Notice it's available on the journal entry inquiry. Also, two new buttons here on the employee maintenance window. Payroll getting some more love here. Now we can attach documents to our employees. So if we have all that onboarding paperwork that you want to capture and maybe assign it digitally to the employee, we can do that right from the employee maintenance window or the employee inquiry, because maybe we get a change of address form filled out, and now we can add it someone who only has access to the employee inquiry. Generally, we'll see that maybe somebody in HR has access to the inquiry. Here they can come in and just click the paperclip and add that new document to the employee. Totally cool. Now we have our I-9 attach button. Yay, I know I'm hearing some people out there cheer. You can attach your electronic version of your document to support the I-9 window in GP, and that's under HR, payroll, cards, human resources, employee, and then I-9. There's no corresponding inquiry window here. If you need to see what's been attached, you just come into this actual window and see the attachment. Very, very cool. For document attach, also love this too. I'm loving the document attachment. We can now attach to our fixed assets general information card. So now we have the purchase invoice, but it's in the payables, but we want to have some documentation that goes along with our fixed assets. And right from within fixed assets, we have the attach button, and we can attach that information right to this general window for us to see easily without having to go into the basement into those filing cabinets like I know we often have to do. This is also available from the asset inquiry window. So depending on your security, you may not have access to the general information card, but you may have access to the inquiry. Pretty nice. So document attach, getting a lot of new features. And we'll move right along here and take a look at some of the changes and enhancements to the web client in GP 2018. If you're a web client fan like I am, you may have noticed that it was a little bit of a taxing process to find smart lists. We live and breathe in smart lists. Now Microsoft has responded to the community and said, you know what, we're going to put the smart list link right on the toolbar within the web browser, so you don't have to take those 2 or 3 extra steps to get to your smart list. Also, if you use the autocomplete in GP, in the client itself, in the FIT client, and what I mean by that is if you start typing out in any of the master records, if you've previously typed it, it'll present that list for you, making your keystrokes less and your accuracy higher. Up until versions prior to GP 2018, that was not available in the web client, and that is something now available in the web client. Pretty cool. Nice time saver there. And for web client functionality, here's another one, the bank rec here. I love this too. In the bank rec, select bank transactions for your bank rec in the web client. You can now maximize this window. This is going to save you some time. You get to see more information on your screen instead of having that smaller scroll window. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the new features for the sales module. We've got a couple here as well. First thing, want to make sure that you're aware of this new functionality. It's to email single statements for a customer. This is right off of the customer card or the inquiry customer card. Now we can email the single statement for our customers. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump over into GP and go into my customer card. Let me see if I can pull up a customer here. And then right here in this print, the customer report is what we generally have. Now if I hit statement, I have the option to choose which format. It's going to default to the one we have set in our settings. And now I have my statement for my customer that I can just click send to and email that off to them. That's a nice time saver, especially for those folks who hear from their customers and they want an updated statement on the fly like that. Pretty nice. Also in the sales module, there's now a customer on hold icon that'll be presented to those folks in the sales transaction entry window so that they know as they're working on this transaction that the customer is in fact on hold. This is helpful. We're notified as we put the customer in, but when we come back or we have this order here, now we have this actual icon, this red stop sign here showing us that the customer is on hold. And also right from there we can click and go in to see the hold, the details, how it was assigned, who assigned it, when, and what time. And even if we need to make a decision to remove them off a hold right from here. That's under your sales transaction entry window. Obviously, it would work regardless of the type of the document, whether it was an order, a back order, fulfillment, invoice, etc. That's the end of my short list for the sales module. I want to just point out a few things that are brand new relating to GP 2018 in the administrative category. I only got a few things here, but they're pretty powerful. The system password, if you're a GP admin, you're familiar with what happens when you go into administration and you want to maybe look up user security. So you enter the password, but anytime you navigate back there or into other windows that are drilled through, you have to put the password in over and over and over again. Now with GP 2018, that password is recognized per session, per login. So I've put it in one time. If I needed to pull up another window that is normally accessible via passing the system admin password, notice I did not have to put it in there again. If you're not familiar with these windows, no worries. The admin folks on the call certainly are, and they would have had to put the password in there again. Even though I'm completely out of those windows, I can come back in. Because it's the same session, I don't have to put the password in again. That's the system password change for GP 2018. Next, from an administrative perspective, is protecting your smart lists with passwords. These are unique passwords. So right from within smart lists, what we tend to do is we rely heavily on these smart lists, and rightfully so. They're pretty cool and pretty powerful. But then comes along someone who isn't quite sure exactly why you have your smart list set the way that you do, and they make a change to it. But now you can put a password on that smart list favorite of yours and really truly lock it down so that it's 100% consistent from closing to closing or week to week, depending on what you're using that smart list for. That's pretty cool as well. If you weren't familiar with this Visible To option, this is relatively new. Visible To says, okay, I'm going to create this and make it available to everyone in the system, or maybe I want to make it only available to myself. That's a nice little feature too. Alrighty, so moving on, I think that brings us to the end of administration. Next, we're going to talk about payments. And if in Dynamics GP, up until this version, the new version, GP 2018, everything was named checks. It was select checks, edit checks, etc. Well, with the plethora of new options available to make payments to our vendors, Microsoft has gone ahead and made changes to this whole naming of this area. So now it's build payment batch rather than build check batch. It just makes a whole lot more sense because it is the same process whether you're doing check or EFT or prepaying a purchase order with a credit card. You'll notice these changes all throughout GP. Normally you would see manual checks. Well, now we're calling it manual payments. Build check batch, now build payment batch, etc. Just so make you note of that. No real functionality change there, just naming. However, with some good functionality change here, I like this a lot. Right now in the build payment batch window, you have the option, let me go in there and pull it up. Build payment batch window. We have the option here, one payment per vendor or invoice, right? So this is something you're probably familiar with on the batch level, and it applies to every transaction or / vendor in that batch. But now we have the option to actually designate the vendor. So if we have a vendor who always wants to be paid a single payment per invoice, we can come in to the vendor options. I went into purchasing cards vendor and then hit the options button. And right here, the first line is one payment per vendor or invoice. So now we can control the setting on the vendor level and just include those in our normal build batch, our payment build, and not have to worry about remembering that setting. Trick here though, I'll come back to there, is we have it set by default for vendor. That's going to ignore the option from the vendor card. Set for invoice, going to ignore the option from the vendor card, or we can have it set to use the vendor option and just sort of set it and forget it. Pretty helpful. What's next? Oh, this is totally a favorite of mine, save build settings. So if you make payments to vendors, what happens is there's some checkboxes. And for years, we've always talked about, is there a way to default unchecking credit memos and unchecking returns, maybe uncheck print previously applied documents, all these kind of little nuances that rattle up the communication between us and the receivables department at with our vendors. So you have to remember to uncheck these more often than not. But now with this new option called Payment Option ID, everything below there gets saved sort of as a template. So if I wanted to, I have one set up here. I'm just going to show you. I have one set up where I was using my Payment Priority ID, and I just picked that and it automatically inserted my restriction and unchecked the boxes that I wanted unchecked. So if, for example, if I wanted to create one to always use vendor option and uncheck everything, I could create a new payment, a new payment ID, and it will remember those settings for me to use the next time. So I'm just going to add that. And maybe I would pick, I don't know, maybe my payment priority was 3 here, uncheck these guys, and then from now on, anytime I use this payment option ID new, those are the settings going to be. So this could be super helpful in managing your cash, keeping it in-house as long as possible, but still taking advantage of discounts. Payment option ID, check it out. It is pretty cool. And yes, you can have more than one. So these are available system-wide, so you can use your initials and have yours set specifically for you. That's all for payables. Let's go ahead and talk about what's new in GP 2018 for purchasing. Couple cool things here. If you're using the requisition area, quite powerful, excellent functionality, integrates with workflow, doc attach, etc. Up until now, you really haven't been able to get a purchase requisition document out of the system without some customization. But right now, brand new functionality, the requisition now has a purchase requisition report available with it. What I like about that even more so is if I come into my purchase, my requisitions navigation list, if I have more than one requisition that I want to print, I can pick them all or hand pick them if I want to, and then print that. Rather than going into each window one at a time, now you see I have 2 pages, and there's one requisition document, and there's the other. So I just picked all, but you could hand pick. You could filter this list down and only get certain vendors or certain requester. Pretty nice, pretty helpful. Also, if you're using the procurement content box on your home screen, right now the purchase order, when the requisition gets turned into a purchase order, the purchase order will actually be displayed to the requester on their home screen. Pretty much telling the requester that we've gone ahead and committed to a purchase order. Another really nice one here is the purchase order generator list. When we go ahead into, if you use PO Generator, which is under Purchasing Transactions and PO Generator, let me go into there. So what I'm doing now is based on my minimum and maximum stock requirements, I'm going to have the system present to me suggested purchase orders. So I'm just going to click suggested purchase orders, and here, based on my minimum and max quantity sets, it says, hey, it looks like you need 2 purchase orders. So this one's getting an error. Let me just quickly fix that real quick. Looks like it's just missing the vendor. Good. So now we have 2 purchase orders that are being presented as suggested. I'm going to say, you know what, that makes sense. Based on our min-max, I'm going to generate it. This is the new part here is where now we're going to get a list of those purchase orders generated. So I've always been able to just click OK here. But what's happening in the background is it's bringing me into a new navigation list where I can see those purchase orders that I just generated. And so if I needed to, I was the same vendor, so combined them. But if I needed to and it was multiple vendors, I could click each one individually and take care of getting those purchase orders out the door rather than having to go back and manually pull them up one at a time. The new purchase order navigation list, super helpful, a big time saver. All right, so last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about some new functionality relating to workflow. So in Dynamics GP, since about version 2013 R2, brand new way of handling, workflow. And what I mean by workflow is basically taking any business process you have and transforming it into an electronic method for ensuring internal controls and that the tasks are completed. So think of this right here. I'll use this as a good example. GL batch approve. So general ledger batches, you have a batch of general ledger transactions. Maybe you're printing them out and you're taking somebody, they're reviewing them and they're initialing them, and that's your sort of manual business process. Well, workflow is taking that process and turning it into an electronic version using some digital transformation aspects here, including document attachment. These are the 15 workflows that are available up into GP 2016 R2. Really a great set of workflow already available. You can see we have even Smart List Designer view approval, which is great for those administrators on the call. But what's brand new in GP 2018 is there are 3 new workflows for GP 2018. And these really bring workflow full circle, particularly in the purchasing module. So if you're using requisitions, you can see that we have purchase requisition approval, and we have payables transaction approval. But there's a little bit of a gap there. We have requisition, PO, then payables transaction. But what about when you're receiving your goods? Now you can go ahead and apply a formal electronic workflow based on rules. Maybe if it's under a certain dollar amount, it goes to this person for approval, those kind of things. for your receiving transactions. Very, very cool. Already includes out-of-the-box emails, because if you wanted this to be communicated via email, you could certainly do so. If you're not familiar with workflow, it also provides the functionality where transactions and master records and, for example, these receiving transactions can be reviewed and approved within your email, which is super great. They don't even have to be a GP user. And using the power of document attachment, somebody could actually just see that document in their email and never have to launch GP and approve it from there. In addition to the receiving, you have the invoice that comes from the purchase order, the purchasing invoice, workflow around that as well. So this kind of brings that full circle. We have workflow from the requisition to the purchase order to the receipt, or the receipt to the purchase invoice, and then naturally you have it for your payments as well. Last new one is for general ledger account. This is by far a simple one, but boy, oh boy, this is my favorite. So how many times have you had GL accounts that are, you know, the last segment is blank, or someone puts spaces in it, or they just quickly click to add when they really shouldn't have, when they mistyped it in the payables transaction entry window? You can set up GL workflow now. So anytime a new GL account is created in the system, someone will get an email and they have to approve it before it can get used. This is excellent, not just because it keeps your chart of accounts clean, but also it can be used to create tasks, to remind you to add these to your management reporter reports, or your Excel, your JET reports, or any other reporting tool that you use. So excellent. And one of the biggest pain points with general ledger account creation is making sure that everyone knows who needs to know, because they have some responsibility to update somewhere. And here is a way that you can manage that using the GL account workflow. In addition to those 3 brand new workflows, there's been some other enhancements in the workflow area of GP. So if you've looked at purchasing workflow in the past and you felt like it wasn't quite going to fit your needs, a lot of that comes from things like, well, we didn't have the ability to pick the class ID as a mechanism to route the transaction. These 5 new fields, vendor account, comment 1 and 2, class ID, and payment priority, are now added in the extended fields list. Beyond that, there's a developer's toolkit that you can use to go even further, maybe to use like segments of your GL account. So really a lot of work put into workflow. Pretty cool stuff. So also workflow, we have the ability to assign a calendar to workflow. So Shawn did not, he needs to approve this GL account, but I'm going to give him just 2 days to do it, or maybe 2 hours in your case, depending. But when that doesn't happen, what's going to happen now, brand new, is that user will get a reminder email. So to kind of give them that nudge, hey, this is late, somebody's waiting on you, either approve or reject it, so we know which route to go. Pretty nice. Also, Microsoft heard a lot of feedback from users who are already enjoying workflow, but one of the gaps there was what happens when someone changes their EFT information. So we want to pay our vendors maybe electronically, hopefully. Now workflow can be triggered based on EFT details on the vendor. And it can also be filtered and routed based on those that EFT data. So maybe if you're in multiple countries or you have multiple states, you can route these based on some of that EFT information as well. Go back to that real quick. I want to make sure that I point out that those fields, for example, the account, the routing, etc., they're available to be added to those emails, so that the approver, if they're not a GP user, they can see that and vet that information out via email. For purchase orders, the account description was added as one of the available fields. Up until now, you could add the account number, but not the account description. And more often than not, the approver may not really know what the account number specifically means, so having the account description there, certainly helpful. Also included that in the workflow email and the PO email and the requisition email as well. If you've ever built out workflows, I love this as well. If you've ever built out workflows, more often than not, you're doing it maybe by cost center or department or something like that. And it's very similar from one step to the other. It just changes who the approver is. So if my cost center is 001, the approver is Shawn. If it's 002, the approver is Chelsea. Well, rather than go through each one of those incremental steps to build out steps, you can now copy it. So you build your first one, copy it, give it a new name, and just change the data that you need to change. Big time saver. You may have noticed if you use Workflow that Workflow has a really good way of tracking an audit history. So what I mean by that is we can go ahead and see when it was submitted, when it was rejected, who rejected it, when it was approved, who approved it, those kind of things. Now, in GP 2018, we have an out-of-the-box report that we can run that even includes the comments from the approver, whether they approved it or rejected it, or even delegated it. So you can see here in my screenshot, the batch approval, this was delegated, and then it even says who it was delegated to. That's a fantastic audit trail, and I feel certain that you'll find that valuable as you start to use Workflow.
We appreciate your time today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Again, if you have any questions or any follow-up, please feel free to reach out and contact us. You'll see contact information up there on the screen. If you do have an interest in upgrading, we're not already working on that with you, please feel free to reach out so we can get that process going. You can take advantage of some of these new features. And again, thank you guys for joining the webinar, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.